Run for Fun 75 says, great review and what a nice surprise to see other brands like this. Lately you have tested some pretty nice shoes. What would your top 5 be halfway through the year? Okay, so I left you a little bit of a cliffhanger in my last Q&A. I am going to cover that today. My top 5 trail running shoes of the first 2/3 plus of 2025. Okay, it's the middle of August here. This is going to be my top 5 list personally. So my list, my rules. When I do my reviews, I try to do a good job of being objective, covering different scenarios, maybe alternative options for different styles of running, different types of terrain, different types of runners. So I just want to point out ahead of time, this is my personal list. I may lean a little bit towards the lightweight racing side of the spectrum, but I have some other plans for another video, which I'll talk about towards the end. As you can see, there are more than 5 shoes on the table, so I don't want to give away what my top 5 picks are just yet, but also as I talk about my top 5, I want to talk about comparable options, alternative things that I've talked about in my Q&A videos especially, and also some of my comparison videos, this shoe versus that shoe and the other. There's definitely options, similar shoes on the table here, which may not have made the cut for my top 5, but for whatever reason, they may work better for you as a runner. So I'm gonna talk through a little bit of that as I go. Also, I pulled a few questions, so I'm gonna mix in a little bit of Q&A for some of the options. I'm gonna talk about some of the shoes that maybe didn't make the top 5 list because they're still in the testing pipeline. Maybe I didn't have a chance to A, race them, or B, just like put enough miles in them as I've have some of the shoes from early in 2025. So I think that's where we're gonna start. Let's start off with shoe number 1 here. We're gonna go real simple, real easy. This shoe is gonna be on everyone's list as one of, if not the top shoe of 2025 at the end of the year, the Norda 005. Now I also put up a little spec sheet here. There's a lot of shoes on the list, not just the top 5. So I do have the specs up here for a lot of these shoes, so I don't have to go racking my brain in the middle of my talks here. Norda 005. This is perhaps the lightest shoe on the table here. Trying to think. Yeah, it probably is. Okay, we've got this one at 8.5 ounces, 240 grams. This shoe is just incredible. The lightweight, the springiness of the foam, Dyneema upper, super secure fit, high volume fit. I must point out I have a lot of Norda videos. Definitely the 005 has been in plenty of my comparisons. Also, I did a Norda sizing breakdown if you're interested in that one. 001, 002, 008, of course, plus the 005. So I find that Norda has slightly different fits and feels between some of those different models. You might want to check out that sizing video. That one's pretty popular. Again, this shoe is going to be on everyone's list due to the sheer lightweight of the shoe, plus the stack, the energy of the foam that you get at that super lightweight. Okay, there's a lot of shoes that can hit this level of stack. I measure 34 at the heel, 27 under the forefoot. A lot of shoes, a lot of brands can match that stack, but not at 8.5 ounces. Again, no plate in this shoe. That's another interesting factor. We may see a couple shoes that are unplated in the top 5 list. I do have to mention, this is in no particular order, this list, okay? This may not necessarily be my number 1 shoe. I'm not actually gonna rank them 1 to 5. I don't typically do rankings or ratings in any of my reviews. I find that, I don't know, it just distracts from the feel that I'm getting from my shoe. I like to really talk about how it is on the run versus thinking about some kind of arbitrary number in some type of arbitrary category. So again, top 5 shoe 2025 Norda 005. If you happen to have $325 lying around, this is not a bad option to have in your arsenal. All right, let's move down the list here. Let's get right away to number 2. Another one that I will say will most likely, if not definitely, be on everybody's best of 2025 list, the La Sportiva Prodigio Pro. This is probably the shoe that I got the most questions about out of any shoe, probably across all my reviews. see it in a lot of comparisons, and I've got even more questions and comments to do comparisons against other shoes. Every shoe that comes out, they want to compare it to this shoe. So that shows people are highly interested in this shoe, and it is a very performant shoe for sure. Check out my comparison video, this shoe and the Mount Ghost T1. I'm gonna spill the beans right now. The T1 is not on my top 5 list, and one of the reasons being that I think these two shoes are just very similar. No plate involved, flexy, slightly different kind of stack feel. The Prodigio Pro is extremely flexible. You get with the T1 probably a little less flex. It's just as flexible, but I feel like I'm putting a little bit more effort into kind of twisting this shoe than I have to with the Prodigio Pro. Both similar platforms on the ground. This is a Puma foam nitro TPU, mainly in this with a EVA type of cage here. I pulled one comment about the Prodigio Pro. Again, I've done a lot of comparisons with this shoe, answered a lot of questions in Q&A. So I just pulled one here. I noticed the Prodigio Pro being warm out here on the East Coast. Need a matrix upper and remove the inner liner around the toe box. See, this is something I pointed out, so I'm not gonna go in too much depth. You have a power wire mesh around here. You can see this. This is like completely transparent. It's literally wires weaved on top of each other. And then you have this inner booty layer, which is a knit material, mostly through the tongue, a little bit on the sides is kind of neoprene-y, but it extends all the way through the front of the shoe. So you have a full 2-layer setup here. And I found, and I did mention this in my T1 video, maybe in hot, humid climates, situations where you fully soak the shoe. I did do full wet tests in this shoe. I found that this inner portion, obviously nothing is going to get held in this power wire, but the inner mesh here does tend to hold a little bit of water. If you're in drier climates like I am out here in Boise, maybe some mountainous type of, again, dry areas in the American West, that may not be much of an issue, but you do have to go through creek crossings quite a bit, and that could be a factor. It seems to hold water more so than other shoes, but just love this shoe. The ride of this shoe, the fit, the width of the forefoot is just excellent for me. It fits me like a glove. As usual, I recommend a full size up in the Prodigio Pro, La Sportiva in general. Speaking of which, I have the Max in for test, and they sent me a US 10 by accident initially, which was a half size up. And I think that was good to kind of reiterate the fact that I do recommend a full size up for La Sportiva. So I do have the 10.5 now. I've got maybe 20 miles or so in this one. I'm finding this one not as flexy as the Prodigio Pro. Still, it's a higher stack and it's somewhat flexible, but probably needs a little bit more break-in than some other high stack shoes. I'm still working the test miles on this one. I did have a comment somewhere asking if the tongue was improved over the Prodigio Pro. This is a more standard tongue. A couple of people have mentioned that they've gotten lace bite from this one, which I don't really see. It's kind of this very thick clamshell padding here, and I find the laces go right over this clamshell kind of bolsters that are running lengthwise up the tongue here. And I think that really mitigates any lace bite. I don't understand how you could get lace bite. Maybe it's just the structure of them being rounded, as opposed to, you know, you could kind of see how they're rounded into sections on the underside. So maybe that's potentially pushing into the foot as opposed to being kind of a flat underside there. That could potentially be an issue. Here you got more of a standard tongue. It's kind of just flattish. It's not short like some of the Hoka tongues. I've got the Mafate 5 here. That has a similar kind of design, but it seems to be a little shorter. This one, no problems with height, so you're not gonna be extending above the top of the tongue here. There's thick bolsters here, kind of two more centered along the tongue. This is pretty thin along the sides, but that tucks under the edges here, which is good to protect from any rigidness at the top of this collar here. I don't know. I would say that this has less padding, but the fact that it's flatter on the underside, maybe this will be a better setup for you, whoever asked that comment, or for others that maybe feel like a more traditional tongue. This is definitely an unusual design. I can't think of another shoe that has this type of padding. Obviously they had to do something a little bit different, being that it's a full knit booty on the inside, so maybe this will work better for some. Okay, moving on from purely versatile trail running shoes, mid to long distance racers, even short distance potentially. I did run a 20 miler in the 005. Moving on to a pure short distance racer, my third pick is the North Face Vective Sky 2. And I do have a comment here to kick things off. Hey Mike, thanks for the great content. I was wondering what you think of using the Vective Sky 2 for slower running over sub 10K distances. I know it's designed for speed, but I'm in rehab from a tibial bone stress injury and looking for a lower stack shoe that isn't excessively soft with a 6 to 8 mil drop, and wondering if the Sky 2 is my best options. I'm a midfoot striker. Would you say it feels like a 6 mil drop if landing midfoot? Also wondering what the contouring is like under the arch and how the stability in midsole compares to the Norda 002. Okay, this is listed at a 6 mil drop. We'll start off there, 28-22. So quite thin. 28-22 is my measurement there. So 6 mil drop. The contouring of the arch I find to be very high. I think the Vective rocker in this shoe is most apparent under the arch here. You have that clear rocker, especially in the front of the shoe, but even with the carbon fiber plate, it's still very flexible, but I do find that arch section pushes up into the middle of the foot, under the midfoot. So I would say in terms of the feeling of a drop, it does not feel like a 6 mil drop. It really kind of, when you hit or land midfoot, you see how the shoe kind of flexes, and you can see how the arch kind of pushes up. I think that's great for foot security because it really pushes the heel as that arch goes up. When you land, it keeps the heel super dialed into this shoe, but it does feel quite low. So I would say it even feels like a 4 mil or probably even somewhat flat riding shoe. Okay, this is a ton of ground feel, 22 millimeter under the forefoot, that's thin. Plus there is a carbon fiber plate under there somewhere. So the firmness of that does come through to the foot. I may be doing a vertical style race coming up in about a month or so. And this is probably my top pick for that type of race, because obviously majority or purely vertical, the impact from the firmness of the plate under the forefoot is less apparent. I did do Heaven's Gate mountain race in this. I missed a turn. I ended up doing more miles than I needed to. A lot of descent in that race. I thought for that somewhat short distance, it was okay. You're gonna feel some firmness. You're gonna have to get used to a lighter weight shoe. But for purely going uphill, it's also great. Again, because the forefoot is super wide in this shoe, something I've talked about in other videos. I really love that. I feel like it lets my forefoot fully spread out, and I just have great feel even though it's firm. So if it's firm and like squeezing my forefoot together, that gives me that impact under the ball of foot that feels uncomfortable and can sometimes even cause my foot to get a little bit of numbness. So even with the firmness, the plate in this shoe, I don't get any of that numbness at all because of the width of it. And with that Vective rocker, again, seating the heel very well and just keeping the foot super secure, locked into it. The foot doesn't move around at all, and it doesn't cause my foot to slide up into the front of the toe box on long descent. So this is probably my favorite at the moment short distance racer. It's not feathery light. I think I have a shoe from Merrell, Skyfire 2, that may be a touch lighter, but I don't think it's as versatile. That shoe feels very firm. Could be an option for a pure vertical race, but at 8.7 ounces, this is still surely very light. Getting back to this question here, in terms of injury, it's definitely not excessively soft. I think if you want something that's firm and probably, this may be a bit too much. You talk about having somewhat of a drop. I feel like this may feel a little bit too flat for your particular situation. A shoe I would look at as a step up from that is definitely the Infinite 3 here. It has a similar kind of feel, but there's more stack under that, and it's still flexible, but with the thicker midsole underfoot, I find that the pushing up through the arch isn't as aggressive as with that shoe. It's still enough to seat the heel very well, but the shoe just overall doesn't feel as flat as that shoe. So this one's also listed at 6mm, and it probably rides and feels more like a 6mm. So if you didn't want to, if you were in that situation with an injury, or potentially you didn't want to go that low to the ground, that firm, that racy, Infinite 3 is just an excellent option in that regard. Check out my North Face comparison videos. I've got this one stacked up with the Sky 2 and also the Endurance 4. Of course, if you want to go up to a high cushion shoe, this is going to feel softer, of course, than those two shoes. You're going to get a lot. The ground feel between these two shoes, Infinite 3, Sky 2, and the Endurance 4, is not comparable. This is really dulling a lot of ground feel, not due to the softness of the midsole, just the volume of the midsole and also the combination of the rocker design of this shoe. But it's a smooth riding shoe, okay? If you want to feel like you're just rolling along, this is a good option. And again, another one, all North Face shoes are 6mm drop, so that would be comfortable if you were looking for more of a cruiser type of shoe. We're up to number 4. What do we have next? Of course, this is a new shoe to the market. Not much of a surprise. Very good results from pro athletes. Recently, I raced 108K in this shoe. It is the On Cloud Ultra Pro. This shoe is, I think it's the friendliest super shoe on the market. And what I mean by that is it has a more natural feel. It feels more like a regular shoe and less like a crazy bouncy super shoe. I have another shoe right here, the Puma shoe Deviate Nitro Elite Trail, and this is just very aggressive. This nitro foam is so bouncy. The carbon plate is just super active. It's a very specific shoe, probably leaning towards faster, lighter runner. And it's a little bit more unstable due to that bounciness and the carbon plate action of this shoe. You can see the flex of it. It has good flex, but with that super soft Nitro Elite foam here, plus the full length carbon plate, it just like wants to rocket you off, okay? So when I talk about a shoe being somewhat friendly, this has a nylon fiberglass plate. They went to great lengths to test this out, and they thought it was more efficient in most scenarios, especially climbing, as opposed to a carbon fiber plate. They thought it was an easier flex, and definitely than having carbon underfoot, a little bit softer, still quite flexible. The speed board, as they call it, I'm calling it a plate, but they call it a speed board. It's X-shaped, kind of a fork like this up front, and unlike this, it's a little bit forked in the rear here with a thicker kind of area in the middle of the shoe. This shoe just rides super smooth. You can see it has a rocker up front, but it's very shallow and it's just very gradual. I find that it's a very soft feel that you want in a high stack cushion shoe, but there's not that aggressive carbon fiber plate action. It's also quite roomy. I have this in a US 10. I size up to US 10 in all of my On shoes, including the road shoes. I just tested the Cloud Surfer Max, the regular Cloud Surfer 2. I have the Cloud Ultra 3 in a 9.5, which fits me comfortably, but I do find that going up a half a size is the ticket in On, and add a half size up, 10, which is what I would call my ultra sizing, it is a quite roomy fit. And if you want to have a more snugger feel, I would recommend going true to size. But if you want to have that ultra sizing where you have plenty of space in the front of the toe box, I would recommend going up a half size, and you're going to get plenty of width in this shoe. If you were worried about On shoes in the past being maybe a little bit narrow, a little bit pointy, you can see the front of this toe box. It's very squared off, especially on the lateral side here. I didn't have any issues of any of my smaller toes getting pinched or squeezed at any point in this toe box. Overall, just a very comfortable shoe. I've got 9.8 ounces, 278 grams. So it's not one of the crazy light shoes, but again, stack height here is quite high. I measure 39 at the heel, so 9.8 ounces, 39 at the heel, 6 mil drop, 33 at the forefoot. This is one of the top super shoe mid to ultra distance racers on the market. And I do have one Q&A question here. Would you recommend the 3, that's the Cloud Ultra 3, or the Pro for a first-time ultra marathoner, 100K? I've tried them on. I like both, but I don't know which one would be more suitable. So this is definitely a friendlier super shoe for most runners, but first time 100K, I'm not sure if a super shoe in general would be the top pick. I think as long as the terrain is more moderate and runnable. I didn't copy the follow-up comment here, but the Pro is noticeably cushier compared to the Cloud Ultra 3. Cloud Ultra 3 has a touch less stack, but that is mostly noticeable under the forefoot. It definitely feels firmer, probably more stable. This shoe at 39.33 rides a little bit tall. It's also soft, very energetic, so you have to kind of manage that height when you're in uneven terrain. So if it's your first time running 100K, I would say if it's technical or even moderately technical, I would say it's maybe a good pick, but you just have to make sure you put the miles in the shoe so that you're used to, and that's not this shoe specifically, maybe super shoes in general, that you're used to kind of that highness of the shoe and also the wobble kind of from the soft foam. Cloud Ultra 3 might be a better pick, but then again, 100K is also on the longer side, being that the Cloud Ultra 3 runs a little bit firmer. I would say obviously this is going to be a more comfortable, more performant shoe than the Cloud Ultra 3, with the caveat that you are going to safely be able to run 100K as a first-time ultra marathoner in the shoe. Again, soft shoes, high stacks like that, they can cause issues with your ankles, your knees, your hips, all the way up the chain if you're not used to being on such a high stack. And this goes for road racing, trail racing, anything. Super shoes, high stack, carbon plate, or speedboard, nylon, fiberglass. In this case, it's a different kind of feel than a regular type of shoe. So I would, in an ideal scenario, recommend maybe having this shoe and working your way up to shorter distances, say maybe 50K or less even, and then work your way up to 100K. But if you're jumping into 100K, again, I talked about what you would want to do. Make sure you're comfortable in this type of shoe before the race, as much as you can be. So that brings me to number 5, the last in my top 5, okay? Quite a bit of racing options here. I'm leaning heavily towards lightweight shoes. Not one of these shoes is above 10 ounces. Of course, the Norda 005, the Prodigio Pro. Let me check the weight on that one. Prodigio Pro 9.6. This one's super light. Sky 2 8.7. What do we have on there? And for the last one, I wanted to go with something a little bit more ultra distance oriented. I feel like I picked a lot of lightweight racers, and those are just, maybe that's just me. Again, my list, my rules. This is just kind of the shoes that excite me the most, and shoes that I have raced in. Of course, the On, Sky 2, this one. Have not raced in this one, but I think it's going to change within the next month or so. Probably will race in this shoe. A shoe that I haven't raced in this particular shoe, but maybe a previous iteration of this shoe. And number 5 on my list is the MAAP times Hoka collaboration Tecton X2 here. I was happy to get this shoe because I have my other Tecton X2 and my previous X1s. I have 2 pairs. They're just in a box at this point, and I kind of forgot about this shoe. I went out to Beaverhead, ran that race. I wore the North Face Vective Pro 3. A little trouble with so much action underfoot, so much foam, 2 different plates, a lot of stuff. A little tricky, even very rugged terrain, and I almost forgot how good the X2 was as a platform. So again, this is a case of My top 5 list, my rules. Yes, maybe the Tecton X2 may be a stretch as far as 2025, but this shoe did just come out in the summer of 2025. So I'm calling it a 2025 shoe. In the Tecton X2, I have run Scout Mountain 100 miler. In X1, I have run Stanhope 100 miler. I have run I Am Tough. So I have taken flavors of this midsole, outsole unit. Upper was a little different between version 1 and this one right here. This is the same Tecton X2 upper as the original, aside from, of course, the MAAP styling elements. I actually prefer this upper as opposed to the giant Hoka branding right on the side here. Love a light colored trail shoe. As you know, I could see right through this mesh here. Love a matrix upper and love a, as you can see, the sun is shining down on me. The light colored shoes are going to be a little bit lighter than the darker black colored shoes. That's a fact, okay? So a reason to go for a light colored trail shoe, even though they're going to get a little dirty. See this Cloud Ultra Pro 2 after however many 150K I've got in that shoe there. Compared to some of the more recent super shoes, it's definitely on the stiffer side. It has that parallel carbon plate, so you have plates running down vertically, but they're not connected in the middle. I find that gives just enough lateral kind of flexibility to handle technical terrain. It's also a very protective shoe, so it feels stable because it's not as soft as some of the more modern or newer super shoes, the Norda 005. The next version here, Tecton X3 Puma foam right here, of course, Mafate 5 right here, crazy soft under the heel. So you don't have that type of foam in here, especially the lower profile layer here is a firmer EVA, but it's more stable and more protective. You don't have your foot kind of moving as much in the footbed, probably causing some fatigue. The carbon fiber plates, full length, aside from the gap being between the two in the middle, also adds a element of protection. The lugs are flattish, not the most mountain oriented lug, but again, I have run a bunch of 100 milers in this shoe. I still have my previous versions. The exposed midsole has not been trashed or anything close to like that. There's a little bit of abrasion, but really no issues at all. And this is quite a bit of exposed, okay? So this is highly durable in my testing. Those mountain races were nothing to squeeze at. They were nothing to, those mountain races were nothing to sneeze at. They were very rocky and technical in their own right. Maybe not as much as Beaverhead, but definitely rough Idaho courses, and this shoe has served me well. Do have one quick question over this. Tell us your feelings in comparison to the Mafate 5. Love the X2, perfect match between carbon, lightness, and cushion. Yes, lightness. Let me check the spec on this one. I've got 9.7 ounces in this shoe in my hand, 276 gram, US 10, again in Hoka. So a smidge, what's that, 0.1 ounces less than the Cloud Ultra Pro. Stack wise, they call it 40-35. I actually haven't measured this one, but it's definitely lower than the Cloud Ultra Pro. Still, this one, since I've run in it so much, I've kind of put off testing a little bit. I've had just a couple of runs in this shoe. I'll probably do maybe an X2 re-review, if you want to call it that, once I get some more miles into this one. The thing is, I just have a good sense about it, so I kind of put it off, but I do want to get maybe a refresher on how they feel, maybe even race in it, who knows. But I do think it rides lower to the ground than that one. It has kind of a more firmer, grounded feel. So when I have some hesitations as far as running this shoe in technical terrain, due to it feeling soft and maybe a bit high with that stack, those are kind of alleviated with this shoe because it's not as soft. It's not super soft, but not super firm. It's kind of, as this comment says, a perfect match, or the sweet spot for kind of once you start getting into longer and moderate or technical races. I find like this could be a good match. The upper is also, I love this kind of shape of this upper here. It's wide in the front, but not too wide. The Cloud Ultra Pro is definitely wider than this shoe right here, but I find the forefoot width is good, and with the Matrix upper, whatever you need to do to loosen up the lower laces and squeeze them to get the customized fit that you want, the Matrix upper is not gonna flex. It's gonna hold your foot really well. So I find that I typically leave this a little bit looser and don't worry about anything because my foot stays locked in with that Matrix upper. Also pretty rounded at the front. Again, multiple 100-milers in this shoe. No reservations about running the longest distance races in this shoe here. So that rounds out my top 5. I'll go through maybe a few honorable mentions. I talked about my comparison video, Mount to Coast T1. This could easily be in the top 5, but I think it's just so close to the Prodigio Pro, and the Prodigio Pro just fits my foot personally a little bit better. I did have one Q&A question about this. I appreciate your reviews. This comes from Marlo King. I appreciate your reviews. I'm testing the Prodigio Pro. I pronate and I'm finding that it wants to roll in a bit. How is the medial support of the T1 and is it more centered? Thanks. Yes, this shoe, again, very flexible, okay? Extremely, like I'm just twisting this shoe very easily without putting much force into it. And I like that feel. I feel like I could get the front of my foot, it's like a 4-wheel drive. I think I even said that in my review. It just adapts, you know, torsions around terrain, and I like that flexibility underfoot. I just feel like I just have great feel in this shoe, given the fact that it's wide and it really fits me like a glove. So personally, I favor this shoe over this one, but as with other Mount to Coast shoes, I do have the R1. They tend to give you a little bit more on the medial side in the arch. I notice it not in the middle of the arch, but probably right about here. There's a little contouring in that area, and I think that helps to keep you from pronating or rolling in too much, like early if you're a midfoot striker, or definitely if you're a heel striker. It keeps you from pronating in and gets you more directed forward. I think that's probably a feature of Mount to Coast, being that, you know, it's a shoe for super long ultras, multi-day, that kind of thing. You see a lot of runners, Badwater, and these 48-hour, 24-hour kind of things. I think they lean into that real support and maybe, I would say, a hint of guidance at least. So to answer your question, Marlo King, yeah, I think this does have a little bit more medial support. And as I mentioned earlier, this shoe is quite flexible, and check out my A/B comparison video there. It seems to be more forward directed than this one. That one seems to just adapt to anything. I find that even though it's listed at the same drop, this one, it makes it feel higher because it wants to go forward a little bit more than this shoe. So slight differences there. These two are probably alternative shoes. If you can try on either of them, whatever works better for you, I would say go with that. Another shoe I have a comment on, this is TF1978. This is the S Lab Pulsar 4. The V4 is interesting. I feel like there are a lot of directions they can go. It's a blend of two shoes, the Genesis and Pulsar. In the arch area of the foot, it's a little funky. Shoe can do more than it's designed. Yeah, quick check on the specs here. This one's 8.9 ounces, 252 grams. I posted a bunch of comparison videos between this shoe and the original gray Pulsar, which I have on the shelf downstairs. That one's incredible, 6.5 ounces. So 8.9 ounces sounds a lot in comparison to that shoe, but I measure 34 at the heel in this shoe with a 6mm drop, so that gives 28. Clearly, this is a more versatile yet still racing shoe. They have to add these wings here, I think, because they go up and stack, and they kept the platform very narrow, so you don't have a lot of this. You know, if you look at, for example, a shoe like this, even the Norda, you can see how it flares out. The midsole platform on the ground is a lot wider. These are really, I would say, primarily longer distance oriented shoes. Even a shoe, if we take a look at the LD4, you have It's still pretty narrow, but the midsole does come out a little bit more. This one is still quite narrow, a little bit more ground platform, definitely under the midfoot than the rear compared to the OG Pulsar, as I call it, that gray one. It's still narrow, like you can't really see the shoe flaring out on the ground if you're looking down as you're running. So they added these stability wings here because they are going up in stack. 34 is a healthy amount. That's solidly mid-range getting into high. I would have called it a high stack maybe in the years when the original came out, not in these modern times. You have massive stack shoes now. So 34, I would say these days, is mid-range. I was talking about a little funky under the arch. I think I was talking about contouring the support of the T1 here and how there's a slight guidance, a little bit of contouring. It feels like it's supporting the arch a bit. Also with the North Face Vective shoes, again, you have that rocker there and pushing up, supporting, contouring the arch, seating the heel, that kind of thing. This shoe does feel a little bit flat under the arch. There's no insole in this shoe either. It's just like a sewn in kind of layer here. It's a felty layer. It's not like just a rough layer there, but there's no separate insole layer here. And I find that just, it doesn't have that contouring under the arch there to kind of like seat your foot or give you a little bit of support. It does feel kind of flat. I mean, it's like this shoe is, it's like an S-Lab shoe. It's a racing shoe, flat on the ground. I don't think they wanna give you some adaptability. I think they expect you to be running fast in this shoe. And maybe perhaps slower, longer distance ultras, you may be with your form a little bit leaning back, a little bit slower ground strike. So you would want to have a little bit of contouring medial support under the foot. Again, they're giving you some kind of wing support here. I think that's more for like ankle rolls and general kind of stability in technical terrain. But under the foot, under the arch here, there's really not much. It's kind of a flat shoe under there. So I think they want you to be really moving fast. This is a speed shoe, short to mid distance racing shoe. I have this kind of in line with the Sky 2. This shoe is my racing shoe, again in my top 5. And this may be the scenario that I talked about. Maybe the case that I just haven't had enough time to run in this shoe. I'm rounding out my testing of this shoe. I'm gonna do 2 to 3 more runs to round out the week and weekend going into next week. So next Wednesday I will have, or this coming Wednesday of this week, I will have a full review of the Pulsar 4, and I may have some races in mind for this shoe. So maybe by the end of 2025, we'll see if it supplants the Vective Sky 2 as my kind of short distance racing pick. I don't know, but at this point it is an alternative and in contention. Couple other alternatives to talk about. Arc'teryx mountain shoes. Check out my Sawtooth adventure runs in these 2 shoes. Picking 5 shoes is kind of impossible, okay? So it all depends on the terrain. Like if I were going on a pure mountain run, again, check out those 2 videos if you want to see what I'm talking about. Just a little bit of everything, alpine lakes, climbing, descending, rocks everywhere, all kind of stuff. I am loving the LD4. I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but if it were kind of a mountain-oriented top 5, so to speak, this would surely be on the top 5 list, okay? It maybe I don't have the kind of preference for it as far as a fast racing shoe, but for runs like that, surely in the mix. Another one, Silent Pro. This is clearly a surprise shoe for me, and as I've been seeing other reviewers, runners, this is an excellent shoe. It has a rocker setup. It feels in firmness somewhat similar to the Tecton X2. I might have to do a side-by-side test on these 2 just because the firmness of feel, the fit of the shoe, they have similar. You can see even with the vamp there, they're very similar. And interestingly enough, these are not the stretchy vamps as in the X3 here. These are kind of just like to separate the uppers here. So they're very similar in that regard. There's more of a rocker in this one. There's no plate in this one, but it just kind of has a rocker setup that maybe not the most stable, but I would say it's similar in level of stability and control as to this one. You have the plates in this one. I'm not sure if the plates make this one more efficient or the bit of enhanced rocker makes this one more efficient. It could be kind of a toss-up between the two. So this is another one of those models, could end up in my best of end of 2025 list. Again, did a big mountain run in this shoe. Check it out. I will definitely be running in this shoe more. I'm not sure if I have any super long ultras lined up the rest of this season, so I don't know when I'll be able to potentially have an opportunity to race this shoe, but I'll certainly be running in this shoe a little bit more. Speaking of potential ultra distance racing shoes, Fuga EX Pro. I'm mentioning this shoe because it has a supercritical TPU midsole carbon fiber plate, and it feels great. It feels like it could be in contention with these shoes like the X3 Cloud Ultra Pro, X2 Silent Pro as a ultra distance potential 100-mile racer. Again, I don't have a 100-mile race on the calendar in particular for this season as of now, but this is a shoe I definitely want to put more test miles. I'm heading up to the Sawtooth again in a couple of weeks, similar kind of test runs. I think this is one that I have my eye on to do a very long run in because I am so intrigued by my shorter runs in this shoe. The fit of this shoe is just incredible. I feel like I get maybe not the most secure lockdown, but a very good lockdown with very good comfort. Like it just feels like a super plush comfort fit with an almost super secure mountain lockdown. So I am just very intrigued by this shoe. I have not been able to get the full kind of rough and rugged long distance mileage in that I want to. So keep an eye out for a fuller review on this one. I have a quick look of this one and the EX3 model, which I also think for an 11-ounce shoe is a very good shoe. So these two models from Kailas, I'm going to be paying attention to. I think you should keep an eye out for those reviews because these could be kind of sleeper racing options. Just in terms of other high stack shoes, again, I feel a little bit restricted here being in a top 5 list. I'm thinking or having the mind to do another separate best kind of cushion shoes option, because I do think there are options that, well, in a top 5 list, I would lean more towards racing and faster shoes. There are definitely viable cushion shoes that would probably get you more mileage, definitely as far as running longer training runs and, you know, training miles in general. Shoes like the North Face Endurus 4, got the Hoka Mafate 5. This is a very interesting shoe. Check out my full review on this one. This is the most massive stack of them all, excluding the Mafate X, which I do not have on my table right now because I just think, for me, this is a better shoe. It's lighter, it's more energetic, it's definitely more flexible than the Mafate X. I would go this shoe all day over the Mafate X. Unfortunately, for those that are fans of the Mafate Speed 4, this is a different shoe than the Speed 4. But if you're looking at this shoe in comparison to the Mafate X, I think this is a much better pick. Another reason why I didn't have high stack shoes, aside from wanting to do a separate kind of video on high cushioned options, Prodigio Max being potentially another one, which I have not put the full amount of test miles in. I have the S-Lab Ultra Glide. Maybe I will revisit this one. Wasn't a super big fan of this shoe, but if I'm gonna look at higher stack shoes, I may throw that into the mix. VJ Ultra 3 is another one. This is just a super soft midsole. I like this shoe, but I think something about that very soft midsole in combination with the rock plate makes it feel a little bit unstable for me. It's like sometimes I feel the firmness of the plate coming through to my foot, but then I also feel just like the super softness. This is just very soft. So I think it's has the outsole, full coverage rubber, grip traction to handle kind of mountain technical terrain, similar sort of to the side, but I think this kind of firmer midsole works better in that type of terrain than, say, this softness. I just feel a little too much wobble in this shoe, but it is a viable option if you like that type of feel. A reason why I don't have these types of shoes in my top 5 list today is because the Hoka Tecton X3 is not clearly a 2025 shoe, and this may be my top pick of high cushion shoes. So being that I couldn't put this one into the best of 2025 list, I kind of have a hard time maybe picking another high stack shoe and throwing it into this list, knowing that I have this shoe from, I guess, 2024 that I would likely choose over whatever came out in 2025, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna have maybe lesser restrictions when I look at maybe a list of top cushion shoes. So then I'm clearly gonna talk about the Tecton X3 because this is an excellent shoe. Thank you for checking out this best of the first 2/3 of 2025 top trail running shoes. A lot of shoes in the mix here. I'm here for debate, okay? I know I picked a list that was my kind of racing oriented shoes. If you have agreements or disagreements, let me know down in the comments. Those little thumbnail pop-ups with links to the different videos that I've done on the majority of these shoes here, they're going to be down in the description. So please check out the description. I have a companion article on www.humblerunning.com. I have affiliate links where possible for the majority of these shoes. So there's a lot of cool shoes on this table. Come on, you got to be wanting to get your feet into one or another of these if you haven't already. And if you choose to do so, and maybe this kind of Q&A / top pick comparison video helped you out, if you click through those links, it helps out the channel, tosses me a few nickels here and there, and it does support the channel. So why not go for that? Again, if you see something here that you would like to have a follow-up question about, again, leave me something in the comments and I'll answer something a little bit more specific. In the meantime, have a great day out on the trails. I will see you in the Pulsar 4 review coming up, and I will also see you for some more Sawtooth adventure runs in the next couple weeks. And if I get enough questions and comments, I'm sure I probably will, I'll see you in the next Q&A. Thank you for watching.